Hi, I'm Dr. Broussard with the Wagon Train Veterinary Clinic, and in today's segment, we're going to touch upon heartworm disease, but in cats. So my assistant Lacey and I have put together a list of questions, frequently asked questions that clients that present to us quite often. So we're going to run through those and hopefully give you a little bit better understanding of heartworm disease, but in cats. Okay, Lacey.
Dr. Broussard, are heartworms common in cats?
That's a good question, and one that I think has gotten lost in the shuffle over the years. So the answer to the question is no, they're not very common in cats, and there's a couple of reasons why. So first off, I want to share with you some figures just to kind of impress upon you how much of a different disease this is in dogs and in cats. First off, dogs. If you took 100 dogs and you gave them heartworm disease, like you in a lab implanted them with heartworms, you would pretty much have 100% of those dogs test positive for heartworms in a matter of a few months. Okay. Excuse me. Dogs is the endemic host, like that's the natural host for heartworm disease. Cats are not, but they can contract it. The same study was presented to me one time where if you took 100 cats and you exposed them to heartworms, you're probably going to get anywhere between 5 and 15 of those guys come up positive. So they're much more naturally resistant to the disease. The other thing too that I always thought was interesting, in dogs, it's not unusual, especially in larger dogs, that you could have a very large population, 20, 30, maybe even more than that worms that reside in the heart of a dog. Whereas in cats, it's much smaller. 1 or 2 worms in a cat, and you typically have a pretty significant, I would argue, life-threatening infection in a cat. So it's not common for that reason. They are naturally resistant to it to some degree, but I would also argue at the same time it's a much more serious disease if they do contract it.
What are the complications of heartworm disease in cats?
Yeah. Again, it is a more serious condition in cats. How it normally presents, I guess you could say similar to dogs, but it takes fewer worms to do this, would be respiratory signs. It's the most common thing that I see. A cat that might come in for hacking, coughing, maybe even open mouth breathing, maybe poor color. Maybe the cat was running around playing or jumped off, just jumped around a normal day and all of a sudden just collapsed, acute collapse. Things like that. So it normally presents as either cardiovascular or respiratory signs in a cat. Every once in a while, maybe the literature will tell you'll see vomiting. I personally have not seen a cat come in for vomiting and then later diagnosed heartworms. It's always been the respiratory signs that I have picked up on.
Are there side effects to the medication used to prevent cat heartworms?
In my experience, I'm going to say no. Because again, most of the medications I'm using to prevent are combination medicines that also do fleas, maybe ticks, ear mites, heartworms, intestinal worms, all that kind of things. I use things like Revolution Plus, Advantage Multi for cats. Those are all things I've used. Full disclosure in the answer to that question, I have seen some cats that don't like it when you put it on. They act very irritable. Maybe even they'll get a little patch of hair loss in that area because you're putting it on the back of the neck. So I've seen those kind of side effects. But it's not specific to the heartworm preventative that's in it. I think a lot of those products may be alcohol-based because that helps them to absorb through the oil layer in the skin and to be absorbed in the bloodstream. So I think more of the side effects have to do with the liquid itself or the carrier that the drug is in and perhaps not the drug itself. But anytime you put a chemical in or on an animal, you always have the risk of there being a reaction to that animal. But it's not something that I routinely see, not in these guys.
Have you ever treated a cat with heartworms?
I've tried. I don't like to be grim, but I'm gonna be honest with you. My experience with cats that come in and we can confirm a diagnosis, it very seldom ends well for that cat. In my experience. Again, that's why I'm saying preventing it is so much more effective and wise to do than playing Russian roulette with the possibility that they might get it. To try to answer the question perhaps a little bit more accurately, yes, I've tried putting animals on, say, prednisone or things like that. It's usually very limited effect in my experience with those. It's just definitely one of those that you wanna prevent this disease in cats before it ever gets a foothold because your treatment options are very limited. One final thing I'll add, anybody that's had a dog that perhaps had the disease, maybe even was treated for the disease, that drug is not effectively labeled nor used for cats. It's just a much worse scenario with these guys if they do contract it. So do your best to prevent it. Choose whatever vet product you and your veterinarian discuss and what you think works best for you guys. But prevention is absolutely worth every bit of treatment down the road. Believe me, you don't want to go that route. So, okay. All right, guys. Well, that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions, reach out to us. by any of these modern methods. Social media, you can email us, you can simply call, or you can come by if you're old school like me. So if you have questions, reach out. I'm happy to help if I can, and I appreciate you tuning in. Take care.